Dear viewer, if you knew the pain that I have suffered so that I could hear that voice that you didn't hear, but it's an electronic voice that tells me this is now recording. Pat, did I suffer today or did I not?
Did you what? Technology is a bane of our lives.
I think
By the way,
it's taken
apologies
10
for
years
being
off my
very
life.
dark here, but I'm sitting in Donegal and there's a wind howling outside and I see lights flickering every so often. So it could be the elements of nature might also,
Oh.
what would
But
you
you see,
say?
you could be one of these dark, shadowy figures in the background,
Oh, absolutely. But like shit
pulling
funeral
champagne
visors.
strings. Okay,
Yeah.
let's move to, we're a wee bit late, but we had some technological problems and they were a pain in the bum, to put it politely, but we're now up and running. We're going to start with this item on Amnesty International. You want to say a word or two about it, Pat?
Yeah,
It is significant.
what is so odd is yesterday Amnesty International introduced uh, presented a report accusing Israel of committing war crimes. It's and accusing them of genocide. It's the first time they have ever done that in their history. I think they were formed about 1948, and it's the first time they've said one side in a conflict is during the conflict that they have said that one side is committing genocide. The Israelis, of course, have gone ape and so on. But I wrote it down what the Amnesty said, accused Israel of genocide, said it was doing so brazenly, continuously, and with total impunity. Dude, I couldn't put it better myself because that's exactly. Of course, the Americans have said that they aren't. Keir Starmer has stayed quietly, and Israel itself has gone ape shit, saying this is Israel is or Amnesty is anti-Semitic and it's fanatical and it's all other sort of stuff. But Jude, right, the International Criminal Court has uh, issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and the as in Gallant, the former defense
Yeah.
minister. The international what do you call it? Court, not the criminal court, the other one has also issued proceedings against Israel and so on. And there's about 160 nations across the world who have agreed with this. But the Americans and the Israelis, they're basically saying international law does neither applies to us nor Israel. So, basically, I think the whole, that sort of mirage that we had that the Americans and the West were the good guys has totally, completely, and utterly, we're amoral, we're complicit, we're supporting genocide. And then, by the way, the final point was, remember the famous one from our friend George Orwell? He
Mhm.
said that the Animal Farm. He said the final one would be when we'd be told not to believe what we see or hear, but to listen to our masters who would tell us exactly what was happening. That's what's happening here. We can all see on TV what's happening in Gaza. We can see the pictures. We can see the absolute devastation. We can see that the people are starving. We can see that the Israelis are dropping 2,000 pound bombs and tents. But we're told, I don't believe all that. They're only defending themselves.
It's unspeakable. I
Yeah.
must say that that statement from Amnesty, as you say, is unique for them. They'd come out like that and condemn them. But they
Yeah.
did. The word that caught my attention when you read it out, Pat, was the last word, impunity. They're doing
Total
it with
impunity.
impunity. And
Mm.
until the international community finds a way of not just saying they're war criminals or Netanyahu is a war criminal and he should be arrested if he comes into any of these countries. We know that he could come into Britain if he wanted to. He could come into the US if he wanted to, and he would not be arrested. Um,
Oh,
I suggest that they take a leaf out of the Israelis' book. Do you remember the time when the Israeli special forces would seek out ancient Nazis in Argentina or somewhere and go in there
yeah,
and kidnap them and bring them back
yeah,
and put them on trial? I think that's how they got
yeah.
Eichmann, actually.
That's exactly who they got out, man. Yeah.
But you see, if you suggested that should be done with the likes of Netanyahu, people
Netanyahu.
would, because of the history of the Jewish people, people throw their hands up and say, "Oh no, you couldn't do that." Well, then tell that to some of the Palestinians who are their children are dying in front of their eyes, or their children just vanished underneath the house they were living in. It's.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I think it's
Know what's really unbelievable? We can all see it. And yet Starmer hasn't issued a word of it. By the way, 519 friends of Israel or something from the Labour Party, including various MPs and whatever, lords showed up at a Friends of Israel thing the last day, and not a single word of condemnation of Israel. The second thing was there was some function, not function, some sort of debate about organised in the House of Parliament. Not a single, I know about what's happening in Gaza. Not a single Labour MP showed up at it.
That's disgraceful. That really is
Yeah,
disgraceful. But you see, the signs were on it when they did what they did with Corbyn. The
yeah,
whole thing was that he was anti-Semitic, and this is before the whole slaughter began. But
yeah.
they crucified him because he was too pro-Palestinian, and they themselves
Yeah.
have to make sure that they're not charged with that. I was going to say
But
they're
the
charged with
Israelis are
that
coming out and
brush, but
saying,
are thus described.
exactly. Yeah. The Israelis are
Uh,
coming out and said,
but
the what do you call it? The amnesty report is rubbish. But hey, I wrote this down, Jude, because I thought at the time the amnesty report said there was 15 airstrikes between October 7th and April 20th, where 334 people were killed, including more than 100 kids. They said there was no evidence of any uh, obvious military target or military objective. They just killed them.
oh yeah.
15 airstrikes where there was no military target.
Mhm.
That they're saying that's just one example.
Uh,
In other words, and then there was on last night on BBC. There was a place where it said this was a safe zone where they dropped a bomb.
mm, mm. Although, if you look back, and we've said this before, but if you look back at what the Americans did in Japan with the atom bomb,
Mm.
or if you look back with the British or the Germans bombing German cities or bombing British cities, the idea was to put fear of God into the people there and to kill as many people as possibly could. So, in a way, the Israel is not acting in a unique way. It's just a
Yeah,
particularly brutal way. And what surprises me is that they didn't find ways of not allowing it to be seen on TV. You remember when
yeah,
Thatcher went to the Falklands or the Malvinas?
yeah,
She made damn
yeah,
sure there was no cameras on board any of those ships that were going out there
yeah.
because
Yeah.
she'd learned her lesson from Vietnam, where
But Jude, they tried to. The Israelis tried big time. There's no international media allowed into Gaza. The only people that are there are Al Jazeera, and they're embedded because they're from. And they apparently Al Jazeera has compiled. They're keeping it for some sort of war tribunal thing afterwards. But apparently they have compiled an absolutely unbelievable uh, compilation of
uh,
videos proving that this is genocide, where people are sitting on openly and they're just bombed to bits and all
yeah,
this sort of stuff. The Israelis wouldn't allow any. What do you call it again? Jeremy Bowen, the BBC's world editor and
yeah.
international editor, said. Usually, when they don't want international media in it, it's usually a sign that they're doing things that they don't want the world to
Oh, of
see.
course, of course. And as far as I know, they officially have kept the BBC out, which sort of
Absolutely.
surprises me. The ones who have got in are Al Jazeera. And I heard the other day, my God, I put the fear of God into you. They give the body count for Al Jazeera journalists and TV people and people,
Yeah.
reporters and
Who
technicians
support
and
as a
so on.
cameraman and runners.
179 or something like that.
Yeah,
And you do the
yeah.
same kind of tot up for the medics that are there,
Mm,
Médecins Sans Frontières and so on.
yeah,
It's absolutely outrageous.
yeah. But
But
Jude,
Pat,
where's
what will you do to
where is
bring?
the moral outreach about that?
Well, yes, but are we just kidding ourselves? I mean, we're not making any progress by simply sitting here
No.
fuming and condemning them. As you've
But
said,
Jude,
Amnesty's
here's
condemned
the
them.
thing that I think we are doing, and people like me and you, we have a certain amount of influence. Jude, if the legacy of the Israelis is the one that I would like to leave them, because I think they are complete and utter gobshites. They have Jude, they are behaving. You look, the Americans, the Brits, and the Israelis. They are arrogant. They are colonizers. They think they have a right, some sort of God-given right to impose their superior culture on lesser people.
Yeah.
And it takes people, and even the French and so on, certainly they are colonizers, and they have a long history of colonizing. The people who oppose them are the people who have been colonized. People like us, people like the New Zealanders, people like the Australians did. Well, not the Australians this time, but so on. But Jude, it's basically arrogance that they think they're God's chosen people.
Well, Pat, when you mention the fact that the colonizing and so on, again, I remind you of what a colleague of mine said after he came back from a tour of the Middle East. He said, the Brits let us off easy. And that wasn't
Yeah,
even talking about people being slaughtered. He was just
yeah,
saying the way that the Israelis treated everybody. We were
yeah,
the Brits treated us with kid gloves during the Troubles
yeah,
in comparison.
mm,
But Pat, back to my question.
yeah.
Is there, what do you think should happen? What do you think should happen to stop this and punish those who are guilty?
Dude, what should happen, but it's never going to happen. The Americans, anybody with a conscience or any sort of moral imperative, should stop sending arms to the Israelis. The Brits should stop doing it, and all the rest of it. Netanyahu should be up before the Hague, as should be Gallant, the
Yeah,
former chief,
how
who's
would
the
you
guy
go about
said no
arresting them,
water, no
Pat?
electricity.
How would you go about arresting them?
What? Jude, no, to use your term quite recently about the international court. Jude, they took the after the war in the Baltics and the Balkans, didn't they take guys to court and so on?
Oh
And some of
yeah,
them are
for
serving
sure, for
lifetimes
sure.
in prison now. And yeah,
Aye.
so like why quite well, I would say if I had the chance or the opportunity
Uh,
or the authority to send in a group of SAS types to take out Netanyahu, I would have no hesitation. I'd take him out. By I mean taking him out, taking him before the Hague, and
uh,
expose the war crimes of the Israelis. They're getting this absolute rubbish that they're defending themselves. I think that really needs to be exposed big time.
well, yeah,
Hey,
I'd
Jude, there's
agree.
nearly 45,000 people dead. There's
Yeah.
what the Gaza is basically flattened. To use your own example, they've killed children. They have shot dead snipers. Have shot dead children. They've shot dead medics. They've shot dead journalists. What more
Uh,
evidence do you need?
Well, you see, I think I'd be encouraged when you talk about those people. I'm not even sure where it was it Eastern Europe or wherever, but they were
Yeah,
brought to the European Court
yeah,
of Justice and were punished
yeah.
for what they'd done, while the war crimes. But I did never can see Israel or its leaders being brought to the European Court of Justice
Neither can I, Jude, in
and
fairness.
punished. I
But Jude,
never will
that's
see that because it would pull in.
no.
It would pull in the States and it'd pull in the Brits,
Uh,
and that wouldn't mean they wouldn't allow that to
Yeah,
happen.
so, in other words, should from here on in, the Israelis have been allowed to act with impunity. So the next time we hear any American leader, any British leader in particular, talking about the malevolence of the Chinese or the Russians, Jude, I'm just going to go get sick in a bucket because, like, I have reached the stage of total. What would you say? The hypocrisy is off the scale.
Uh-huh. It certainly blows out of the water. If I could mix my metaphors, it blows out of the water the idea of the white hats and the black hats.
I know.
And I see,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the kind of thing that I know, Pat, that you would feel more that the Ukraine is a more clear-cut case. I still keep thinking, if they managed to present Israel as defending itself, well, maybe the whole thing about the Ukraine is more tangled than we're given to believe.
Oh no, Jude, I guess there's a lot to be said. The Russians have a case about Ukraine. There was all sorts of shenanigans going on in Ukraine about Russian speakers, about their denial of their rights, about NATO building a sort of ring around Russia, so about
Mm.
warm water naval vessels and all this sort of stuff
And the
into the warm
2014
water fort.
government was brought down with the help of the
Yeah, exactly.
Americans.
Oh, no, I not on it, Jude. The only problem I have big time is Russia invaded a sovereign country,
Mm, mm,
Ukraine. Ukraine did not invade Russia. And the
yeah.
other thing as well, anybody that tries to tell me Vladimir Putin is morally correct, here's a guy who's 22 years or 23 years now in power, who's
Yeah.
got rid of every opposition. They're either
Mm,
been killed in prison, poisoned, or fell out of a five-story building
mm,
after they were pushed.
mm,
So
mm,
like,
mm.
is that the type of guy like it's a choice of the lesser of two evils?
Well, yeah, that's true. But again, I just we'll leave it at this. Putin, yes, does all those things you've said. And then go and have a look at a man that we both would have admired, and I would still admire for some of the things he does or has done. Joe Biden. Joe
Yeah,
Biden was responsible for feeding weapons to Israel for the deaths of all those people who died in
yeah,
Gaza.
absolutely.
You know, so let's not, simply focus on Putin, the war criminal or the nasty.
No,
The,
Jude,
the very people, your own's the worst.
yeah, Jude. Here's the thing. I think Putin has actually been sort of he's way less in my mind a war criminal than Netanyahu and Joe Biden.
Aye, that's right. I agree. Well, certainly in scale, in terms of scale, from what we
Yeah,
hear.
scale, absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to another really nice man. You'll agree with me that this is definitely a nice man and a very rich man, even richer than you, Pat. Elon Musk. He turned up
Uh,
at in Washington, and there's a picture of him, I think, in today's Irish Times, with his son on his
yeah.
shoulders, and it's
Aye,
just
by the
a
way, did you
touching
notice
little thing.
Jude, stop you there? Did you notice the son's name?
I was just going to ask you, did you know what he was called? Well, it's quite a difficult name to
I wrote it
pronounce,
down.
except your version and
XAEA
that kind of thing.
AX11.
It's XAE, and it's not even A and then an E, but it's the A and E conflated, brought together.
The old AE as the writer, and then the writer's name, yeah.
And then another A and a hyphen and a 12.
Right,
I don't
Jude,
know.
I
I
was
think he
going to
just
stop.
puts that
Jude,
on.
stop you there. By the way, I wrote just after you mentioned that to me earlier on. I looked up. No, some of these other kids' names are.
Hmm.
One is right. There's one XAE AX11. There's XA Dark. There's Cider Real SIDER AEL. That's one of children. And then there's SHIVON Siobhan. I presume that's Siobhan. Silas. Geez, Jude, would you allow anybody to run anything after calling their names, after naming their children like that?
Listen, Pat, when you're the richest man in the world, you can do whatever the hell you like. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah,
In fact,
yeah,
there are people who believe, I don't know if you would share that Musk is so influential and so rich that actually Trump is his puppet rather than the other way around.
uh,
Do you think?
yeah. Judy, he gave what was it, $120 million to Trump's campaign. And apparently it's the best investment he's ever got because it's
Oh.
increased his own personal wealth to 70 billion. But
Hmm.
here's the other thing, Judy. He showed up yesterday at a meeting of the Republicans, and I
Hmm.
think maybe some Democrats were there too. And apparently the spending by Washington is something like 7 trillion dollars by the government. He intends to cut that by 2 trillion. 2 trillion. That is 2 thousand billion dollars. Right now, Jude, there could be an element. I'm not sure, but apparently he's claiming that there are some civil servants in Washington who literally only 1% of them spend work from the office. The rest are working home. He's claiming they're walking around in their pajamas, etc., etc. And he says the bureaucracy has become bloated,
Hmm.
no, not answerable to anyone, etc., etc., etc. It's become inefficient and so on. Now, Jude, I concede that there's probably a certain element of truth in it because you can see it around here.
Ah,
Even
well,
civil
that's always, I
servants.
was going to say that, Pat, always the
Mm,
civil service in Ireland, the south of Ireland,
mm,
certainly, maybe the north
yeah,
too, were
mm,
famous for the fact that there was jokes about them, that
yeah,
if you were in a plane, you looked down and you saw people and they were just standing around. They were either council workers working on the road and doing nothing, or else they were civil
yeah,
servants.
yeah,
I suppose there is a degree of need for tightening up. But if he does what he says he's do, there'll be huge numbers
yeah,
unemployed. Now, employment is good in the States at present, but I can't see
yeah,
that it could withstand the kind of cuts that Musk and company are saying that's needed.
yeah. Jude, if you're going to, what is it going to be? At least 100,000 civil servants
Hmm.
cut right away.
Yep.
That's only a starting point. Jeez, Jude, um, but anyway, this is, Trump has basically, Jude, I think it's all, he, he wasn't that great the last time, and I think he's not going to be that great this time. Right, for starters, Jude, say introduce tariffs. Does he seriously think China is not going to introduce tariffs? The EU's not going to introduce tariffs. Mexico. Wait, here's another thing, Jude. I think I read yesterday that I'm not open to correction on the number, but it's something like 129 countries across the world have now joined with this BRIC. The
Yes,
Brazil
yes, yes.
and China
Brazil.
to
Yeah.
have a look at getting around America, because a lot of them are sort of saying we're not putting up with the bullying and the threats from Trump and his people. Now,
Hmm.
Jude, see that if the rest of the world, now I presume the Anglo world, like the Brits and the Australians and the New Zealanders will stick with America, but the rest of the world might. One of the things that gives America massive power is the dollar as the international currency.
Hmm.
See, some of the other rest of them gets around that and says, right now we're not. We'll start using the euro.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think for the first time since the Cold War, there is emerging, it seems to me, as an alliance of countries that actually will act as a counterweight to the US and
Yeah,
the sort of Western world, as we're called it.
yeah,
Um, so could be big changes. And on the other hand, I sometimes think that Trump is so outrageous and the people he picks to be the Minister for Defense or whatever, that he's
yeah.
going to pull back from that and maybe just put forward people that aren't really that bad. You think?
Yeah,
Or
well,
will seem not that bad.
he's the guy he's put forward to be the minister or secretary of state for defense. Is the guy who has never held public office. He's a Fox News presenter. He in the past has called for amnesties or pardons for American troops who have committed war crimes. In other words, in places like Afghanistan.
Hmm.
Like you're going to say, and like, remember, what do you call it? The guy, he's choice for Attorney General, Max or what? Mark, can't remember his name. But anyway, he was supposed to have had sex with a minor in the House of Congress, and in some sort of stateroom, and he was there, supposed to have been smoking dope.
Hmm.
Or taking cocaine, and this is the guy he was putting up as Attorney General. Now, does he do that just to sort of rattle the cages,
I think so.
or
I think
whatever?
I think he's doing it deliberately to upset and jolt people. I don't think a lot of
I
those,
mean,
well,
the
I
guy's name was
suspect,
Gates,
I'd like to think
Matt
that they won't
Gates.
get
Yeah,
through. But do you see, Pat, if you stop to think about it, a lot of people who have entered politics with very little experience behind them, and some of them made a pretty good job of it. I mean, if you
yeah,
take after the Civil War in the South, I mean, there were some pretty formidable figures who, up until then, had been gunmen who became
yeah,
ministers or the Taoiseach. Um,
yeah,
and the same thing applied after our troubles. Like Martin McGuinness, I thought was a very accomplished politician. And I think he tried to do a good job with in fact, he struck immediately at the heart of the matter when he abolished 11 plus. The only problem was he
yeah.
didn't follow it up and he met with
I
too
put
much
it in something else
opposition
on his list.
from the
But
SDLP and company.
I remember a well-known loyalist type media person said to me, and I thought it was a strange compliment. I know the administration that McGuinness was in. He
Hmm.
said the best minister by a mile was Martin McGuinness. He says Sinn Féin had the best minister and the worst minister. He says Martin McGuinness was the best minister by a mile. He said he was competent and whatever and sure footed and all that. And he said Barbara De Bruyne was the worst. Don't know. That's maybe unfair and poor old Barbara,
Poor
but
Barbara
I
Green, yeah. Yeah, well,
uh,
again, you see, she was a teacher and I'd say a very bright woman, but and very dedicated Republican, I'm
yeah,
sure.
but Martin was used to running a certain organisation, Jude.
Well, yeah, you need to have that administrative skills, one kind or
Yes,
another.
yeah,
You shouldn't be
yeah.
laughing at stuff like that, Pat. They won't take you seriously
No,
as a pundit. Uh, we said that's all in the past. Forget about the past.
that's all
All
the
forgot,
past. Yes,
forgiven.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Anyway,
Will we talk about the fallout still going on as they maneuver and wheel around each other and eye each other up? The efforts to form a government in the south,
oh
Dublin.
God, yeah. Judy, someone see all this sham fighting and fake fighting. You know it as well as I do, Collins, that it's going to be Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Let's drop the bollocks
But
here. It's
there's
a
going to have
set.
to be somebody else, and no, somebody else.
Right,
And I see
someone. Wait a
today
minute.
that
They're
Labour.
what is it? They're 49. What is 49 and what is it? 38? Isn't that it? So they're only short of about three, I think, or
I
maybe
think it's
two.
two. I
I
think
can't
it's
even
two,
remember because I'm
maybe.
not
Yeah.
interested. But I mean, yeah, right. you know, someone should,
But they need
they'll
more
tie
than
down
that.
the
They
two.
need about 10.
They always need a sort of a belt, as Bertie Ahern used to say, braces and belt.
Aye.
You know, the Labour Party may go, but anyway, Jude, there's so many independents, and like Michael Lowry will go in there, no bother, and they'll
Oh,
tie him to
yeah.
5 years. They will also, the two Healy Rays are
Yeah.
basically the same gene pool or the same DNA as Fianna Fáil. Their dad was in Fianna Fáil, and they are total prototype Fianna Fáil. So they're in there.
Mm.
They could get what do you call it? There's a guy I can't remember his name. Collins, independent in Ireland.
Michael
There's
Collins.
three or
Michael
four.
Collins, yeah.
There's three or
He's
four
the
of
head
them.
of a group of independents.
Group I exactly, and they'll do deals with them. They will have no problem whatsoever putting a group together. None.
Do you think they'll leave out Labour and the Social Democrats? Because there's a lot of money being put on Labour. Labour was making it very clear. Ivana Bacik was batting her eyelids at them like nobody's business. That if they came approached her, she'd certainly
I, but
open the
you
door.
know, Jude, every which way, the small parties always come out back. Look at the Green Party and the Labour Party. Labour Party went in with Dick Spring, was its 33 seats,
That's right.
massive number, and they went down to someone. What was it, 4? I'm
Uh,
open to
uh,
correction. And you know, so a bad chick might think it's a great idea to get into government, but down the road, Labour might pay a big price for it.
I think Bacik's a pretty formidable figure. I don't really
Absolutely,
like
she's
her very
very
much, but
formidable.
I do respect her. I think she's pretty sharp. I don't think she'll allow the Labour Party to be put in a position where it would be decimated the way it was back then. She only has 11 deputies in any case. So
Yeah.
I'd think she'd be looking to build the Labour Party, not put it in a
Mhm.
position where it might come under fire and lose some TDs. You
But
think?
how, Jude, if you go into government, you know, some the Green Party took all the flack for,
Yeah.
outside, the M50. When you came into rural Ireland, uh,
Hmm.
the Green Party were hated with a
Uh-huh.
passion.
Uh-huh.
They basically, as I heard a guy on Donegal, he says, like it was all great. He says around Dublin and Cork, where you have
Yeah.
public transport, where you have all this thing. He says, see in Donegal and Mayo and places like that, where you needed a car. He says they were putting and you needed what all these different things. He says it was all very well. He says when you have big conurbations and big urbanizations.
Yeah.
He says, see when you had to travel 30 and 40 miles, you had to
Hmm.
pay dear insurance, dear tax, dear fuel, dear car. And he says, and he says, where was the compensation for people like us?
Hmm. Well, I'll tell you, Pat, my line on the Greens, two things I say about the Greens. One is, whatever about their effectiveness. I've always liked them. They always seem to be sort of likable people. I thought Eamon Ryan came across as a sort of a likable bloke, fairly
Yeah,
modest.
yeah, yeah.
Any of the other
He
Greens
had
that
a lot to be modest about.
well, the other thing is, Pat, I'm convinced that the environment and the ecology is a major crisis. It is the crisis. And
Yeah.
whether we like it or not, they really need to enforce, if necessary, changes in the countryside. And I know the time-honored ways, and I know people are struggling trying to make a living for generations, maybe. But Jesus, we really do have to do something. We can't afford to have, if in fact farming is contributing made in a major way or even a large minor way towards the kind of pollution that's killing the earth. We've got to stop that. We've got to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're a Donegal man and you stick up for the countrymen, but I'm not sure. I think it's too dangerous. I'm too
Not, I'm
worried.
not. Hold on. There's two things. There was an inequity of the Green parties. It didn't affect a lot the big cities in the same way it had impacted in a rural constituency, and
Yes, that's true.
I
That's true. I
don't,
agree with you there.
and like I don't think anybody's arguing. Jude, wait a minute. Let's get this clear. Sitting here in Donegal tonight, and outside my window, I can hear the wind blowing.
Hmm.
We're waiting for storm. What is it, Dara?
Hmm.
Uh, Apparently some parts, I think it's the Isle of Wight, they're expecting 80 miles an hour winds this evening, or sometime later on this evening. It's coming down from the northwest, so we're going to get I think nearly first. And
Yeah.
they're talking. It's a red wind warning. In other words, they're saying this could be structural damage and all this sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Right, Jude. Here's the other thing. In recent years, the number of serious wind things that are coming our way, storms and well, almost bordering on hurricanes and so on.
Yeah.
That's amazing. don't remember anything like this. Our climate has definitely changed. And then,
Yeah,
dude, look at what a couple of weeks ago back in Spain, about 300 people died in Valencia because they got what was it, a year's rain in 8 hours.
yeah.
And then we have these clowns, and I call them clowns because I can't think of another term for them. For a collective now, for people who say there's no climate change is
Well,
not
it's
real.
just,
Jesus, where did they,
yeah,
where
yeah.
what rock did they climb out of
Yeah,
under?
yeah. Well, it suits their political purposes to say that. But Pat, would you not agree with me that given the severity of this thing, I know what I would favor. I swear to God, I'd favor a version of martial law to make sure that Ireland and everywhere else, if necessary, did their bit to stop the planet being destroyed. Simple as that.
Yeah, but Jude, I've and you know what I'm going to say because I've heard it. I was chatting to a man a couple of months ago, and in memory, I said something along the lines that after what you're saying, he says, "McGart, why didn't you grow up?" He said, "We're a wee island," and he says, "on the fringes of the west of the Atlantic Ocean." He says, "Look what China's doing. Look what Brazil's doing. Look what India's doing." And he says, "You think he says, not burning turf is going to make any difference?" You know, and he sort of go, well, he says he claims India is building more fossil fuel stations.
Yeah, no
China's
doubt.
spewing out rubbish right, left, and center.
Uh,
And he says, but the other side of the story is, I would love to know, and I don't mean that in a sort of nice sense, what sort of word my great grandkids will have.
They won't have any. They won't have any. The
Mm,
planet will be polluted beyond redemption if we keep on the way we're going. And that point you
mm,
make, fair enough. That Ireland, we're tiny, and
yeah,
whatever we did will have such a tiny little effect. But it's like the guy who was on the seashore throwing back shellfish or some stranded
yeah, yeah,
small sea creature, and there was hundreds of them, and the guy was picking them up and throwing one in and then another one, and somebody came along and said to him, "What's the point in that? For God's sake, it won't make any difference what you're doing." And he says, and he lifts one and he throws it back, and he says, "It made some difference to that one, didn't it?"
yeah,
The
yeah,
same
yeah,
thing applies. I think just it's almost instinctive. If supposing somebody was going to be murdered, right, and
yeah,
you weren't able to knock them dead, and there was loads of big tough guys around, would you
mm,
surely not try to do it? Would you not feel compelled to do the right thing?
yeah.
Spike Lee made a movie called "Do the Right Thing," and I
The
think
right thing.
that's something we should maybe think about. Somebody said one time, if you want to judge whether an action's right or not, think what would happen if everybody acted as you're going to act or
Yeah.
not act, as the case may be. That's a pretty good yardstick,
Aye.
isn't
What
it?
was it, one of the few things Ronnie Reagan said that I remembered, and I don't know whether it was original or not, was he says, we all can't help everyone, but we can all help someone.
Ah, that's right. He also said,
Yeah.
"Honey, I forgot to duck,"
Hey, but you
and
just
which
mentioned
I
something.
would say,
There's a,
"What
you
a
mentioned
bloody
you mentioned
pity! What a shame
uh,
it was."
what a shame he didn't look. But anyway,
Okay, Pat. Will we leave it at that?
here's the thing. It's about three or four people have mentioned this to me in recent days.
Yeah.
Kneecap. Have you watched that
Oh,
film?
kneecap! I love those little kneecaps. They've
Uh,
done so
you
wonderfully
watched the
well.
film?
I looked at a documentary type of thing on YouTube about them, and the
Yeah,
guy was making the point that in the past the Irish language was seen as being, Enya and remote
yeah,
Ireland, beautiful places and people with wonderful gloss when they spoke. And these guys
yeah,
are gritty, urban, and they F and blind, and they mixed in English, and they jump around and they point the finger and they're rude and so on. And it's, I feel like it's bringing Irish into the present day rather than having like languishing in the corner smoking a clay pipe.
yeah. And there's an American academic friend of mine. She says she's watched it, and she asked me for my opinion of it, and I haven't seen it. There's a wee friend of my dear Mrs. who lives in Spain, who has watched it 4 times. She's English and she hasn't a clue, but she loves the film.
Oh,
I'm going, and I think you mentioned it the other day as well. I'm going, geez, what am I missing?
well, I don't understand most of what they're saying, but simply to see the way they go, and they'll toss in contentious phrases, like
Yeah,
chucky, 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 that kind of thing. But
yeah,
I gather, and also they did one wonderfully good piece of PR work, and we'll leave it at this. They managed to get Kenny bad enough to refuse them a
Ban
grant.
them. They refuse to give them a grant. Yeah.
Clever, clever. Because for something like £14,000, peanuts. And when they got
Yeah.
it, they cut it in two and gave half of it to, was it the Shankill, and the other half to the Falls Road.
Yeah.
Impeccable, I thought. Just brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
There should be more people like that, and more people like us too. Only preferably younger and better looking. What do you think?
Speak for yourself.
Okay, Pat. Thanks very much
Okay,
now.
Jude.
I'm going to
See
switch
you
off
later.
this recording and hope that it comes back again someday.